What's up, wild ones? Ariana here, back again, talking about all things vet tech, all that kind of stuff. Just normal life, being me. Sure, we'll work on a better introduction. But until then, today, I thought it would be a good idea to talk about my experience not only being a veterinary assistant, vet tech, kennel worker, but also having epilepsy or having seizures, if you will. So this is my experience. I hope it helps you out. I hope maybe it can ease some of your fears if you have any, or at least give you a little bit better idea if this is the right field for you, given having epilepsy or what have you. So if this is something that you're interested in, just keep watching. So first things first, I thought it would be a good idea to at least describe what my epilepsy is like, what I experience, only because I know at least a little bit that I know everybody's epilepsy is going to be different. I started having seizures in 2014. I had 2 one day, 1 a week later, 1 2 years later. So my seizures are not frequent. It just depends. This year I've had 1 in July and then 1 a couple weeks ago. I don't get any warning. I don't get the typical things. All of a sudden I just wake up, I realize I bit my tongue, and I have a hard time remembering things, being aware, that kind of thing. After a seizure, which I just recently experienced this, I had the seizure for the first 2 weeks. One of my best friends and my boyfriend had said, it's when we're talking to you, you just don't really necessarily seem like you're all with it. Sometimes I'll talk to you, say something, you answer a totally different question. So I'm really not having a good time first 2 to 3 weeks after. It's getting a little bit better, but there will still be times when a doctor will be telling me something, I'll repeat it to her, and then they look at me like, that's not what I meant, that's not what I said. And then I'm like, oh God, okay, now I look like an idiot. Which is something that I've really struggled with. I haven't had to deal with it too much, but recently, I'd say over the last 3 years, it's gotten worse. I will say, when I had it in 2014, I was like a kennel worker, veterinary assistant. So other than people being concerned with me being in a room by myself when I was in the wards or the kennels, it didn't really affect too much as far as at least I didn't notice it as much as far as memory goes, because it wasn't a requirement to utilize my memory as much as a veterinary assistant. Now, as a vet tech, not lucky that way. As a vet tech, whether you're in general practice, emergency, specialty, I would say I struggled the most with emergency and specialty just because of the amount of things that you have to remember. If I was in the canine ward, I could have up to 15 patients. They could all have different things going on with them. They could all have different personalities, different things you need to know. Some of them get this, some of them get that. And then at that point, I'm overwhelmed. I'd come into a shift for the ER and you do rounds. What rounds are you just going over the cliff notes of how your shift went, how the patients were, what the new things you need to know are when they're going home. Just an overall short, to the point type exchange. For me, it was hard enough to remember all of the patients' names, and that's just the names. Then remembering everything going on, remembering what happened. If I didn't write it down, there's no way I was remembering it. So I'm trying to remember all these things on top of when I would be in the ER and I'd have 15 patients and I can't remember their names, I can't remember this, and then I'm struggling with pharmacology, and then I'm trying to remember the parameters, all while having a fritzy brain that doesn't want to work. It's difficult. I mean, it's something that I've found ways to get around it, which I'm going to talk about. I will say it's stressful. I don't know if everybody's epilepsy is going to react the same way, but I will say, between just the stress that I've been experiencing being in a whole new environment and a very, very intense environment where you need to know a lot. There's no way around it. And if you don't, most places will teach you, but it will be stressful until you are comfortable. And I've never gotten to the point where I was comfortable. It made life very stressful. I'm not someone who gives up, so I mean, I continued to do it and just found ways to kind of get around the struggles that I was having, but I don't know how most people would be able to handle that. So, something to think about. I don't know if this is important and I don't know if it will make a difference, but for me in vet tech school, I was the great at labs. All of my labs, you know, the drawing blood, the technical skills, your girl got that. When it comes to remembering things in the book, I'm not that student. It's almost like understanding a language, but not being able to speak that language is exactly how my life goes. So I could explain to a client how heartworm works, or how, you know, an upper respiratory infection or bloat, or, you know, all of these things. I can explain them in a way that they're going to get it, because I say, you know, this does this and this does this. There's none whatsoever. Scientific terms, because your girl don't like to hold on to those apparently, and makes life difficult, which is not difficult for clients. Clients love me because they can understand what I'm saying. My coworkers, on the other hand, I'm sure they're like, this girl's dumb. She don't know what she's talking about. She's talking like an idiot. It's because I can't speak medical. I can understand medical, can't speak it. So that has made my insecurities way more difficult. But like I said, helps you out with clients a lot. And especially for me, I think my biggest issue too, we're not sure what causes my seizures, but we're pretty sure it's stress related. So emergency specialty, stress. No, not doing it no more. Loved it, learned a whole lot, not doing it. What are some of the things that I did to adjust to all of this craziness? Well, I carried around, so like when I would be in ER, I'd carry around this notebook. Now, when you're doing rounds, I would just type my notes up on my computer that I had, because there's no way that I could, but I type fast. I can't write as fast. So, because there's no way for me to remember everything and keep up with people, how they riddle things off. So I always typed them up. I also put them in a bigger notebook. I know most vet techs in ER and specialty carry like a notebook like this. You write all your stuff down. I also used this when I was in specialty. I would write down all of the patients that I was going to see that day. I would see, you know, what they have going on, write a little bit of notes, take those notes home, try and learn a little bit so that I'm better prepared for the next day. For the notebook, a lot of what I use this for is, say I'm in the runs, or say I'm going to get a medication for a treatment, and I write the patient's name down. I write out all the information that I need, and then I write down the medication. I write down, you know, everything that you need. And then I would take it with me, so that I'm like, crap, what was that? I got my handy dandy notebook. Wonders. And this fits wonderfully in a pocket. And it's rubber, it's plastic. It actually uses the friction pens, if you can see, which I like a lot. Rocket books are really popular in ER and specialty, and I will be using that in general practice. Little notebook, my best friend. Kind of mentioned this in my internal medicine video, but having running Google Docs has been wonderful. It's like having to-go notebook, or, you know, your study book. I did it on Google because not only could I bring it up on my laptop at work, but I can also bring it up on my phone, type something in real quick. And then, like I said in my last video too, when I had some free time, I would use that as studying. And most places doesn't have a problem with this. As long as you're learning, if you're just standing there, they're going to have a lot less issue with that than you playing on your phone, which is what most people do. So I was able to do that, but I would always ask too, because some places don't want you to do that. I guess it just depends on the place. But running Google Documents, if I didn't know a medication, I put it on my pharmacology one, and then I went back and wrote down everything you need to know about it. So then you have it. For me, as long as I have it, I can look it up real quick in my system, and then I answer my own question. I don't have to keep asking people, because that's something that I don't like to do, because then I feel like an idiot every time I ask, which it's my memory problems. I can't help it. But other people don't perceive it that way. So it was my way to get around it. I also think it's super important that you are transparent from the beginning. I can't tell you how many times when I told my bosses in interviews, because that's when I do it right from the interview. I want you to know I have epilepsy. There are times where I don't know it's coming on, and I may have to call off because I had one or what have you. Like, I don't call off often, but that's something I would like you to be aware of. I also let them know there are some days where, like, I just don't feel right. I may not know it's because of a seizure, but I may have to just call off. Like I said, don't do it a whole lot, like maybe once every 6 months, but it's a possibility. They're usually generally pretty okay with it because you told them right away. If you don't tell them and then you start doing it, they're going to be like, are you doing this because you want to call off, or are you doing this because you have a problem? Because people do that, unfortunately, and then ruin it for people like me. Transparency. This is also why people think I'm an idiot, because I can't talk. It's irritating. Transparency. And I'm spitting. Transparency. Not only with your bosses in the interview, but also with your coworkers. So everybody kind of knows what to know. Especially with epilepsy, it's good that everybody kind of has an idea that you have it. Because if you just start having a seizure and they don't know, and then they can't tell the EMTs or something what they need to know, it's just super important to be transparent. And that kind of goes into the next and last tip that I have is open communication is so important. So, and I mean that with everybody. So the clients, the people you work with, the receptionists, the doctors, the techs you work with, VAs, whoever is going to be working with you, open communication. I can't stress it enough. Like when I worked in internal medicine and in the ER, both my managers, all of the people that I work with, knew what medication I was taking. They knew how much of it, they knew when. So then that way, if something happened, they could tell EMT and or, whoever's helping me at the time. At least they have a general idea. It's important for them to know, do you start to feel it? Do you act a certain way? What do you do? How do you react to seizures? Because reacting to seizures in people is a little bit different than reacting to seizures in dogs. Not much, but when it's a person and it's someone you work with rather than a dog coming in, it's a little bit different and people start to panic. It's important to let them know to time it. All of the things in relation to seizures is important to communicate. Can't express that enough. When I'm dealing with clients, why it's so important to communicate that, because there'll be times where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I should have totally known that. I have seizures, so, I forget things sometimes. Thank you for being so patient. And if you're like that and you beat them to the punch of being a jerk about it, they're like, oh, okay, I have seizures. I'm going to be nicer to you. And I mean, even so, you can do that without having seizures. If you admit your thing right away, and then that removes the time for them to be angry and, just be like, oh, I'm so sorry. It works. I hope that was helpful. I know it's been a pain for me working in veterinary medicine while also dealing with epilepsy, but it is possible. You're just going to kind of have to find your own system, but I hope these tips, tricks kind of help. And if it did, please like this video because I don't know any other way. And also, I'm very excited. I am doing pet portraits. So, this is my circus. These are my monkeys. That's my monkey. And there's my other monkey. And this is my third monkey. And it's really cool. During Vet Tech Week, keep an eye out for that deal. Vet Tech Week of 2020. Just putting it out there. 2022. time for me to go to bed. If you're interested in a pet portrait or some really cool stickers that I have going on, 10% of the proceeds go to the Save the Wild Ones Fund, which is a fund that helps with environmental conservation, wildlife conservation, shelter medicine, all of the people that work with animals that need that help, work with the environment, need that help. So that's exciting. We need to build up that fund. I can't wait. It supports this channel. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and stay wild, my friends.